Welcome to In Talks with Tamsin. Tonight I'm joined by Cymone Hughes. She is an emotional freedom technique practitioner as well as Matrix Reimprinted. She's fantastic at what she does. The modalities have helped me personally, so she's going to go into those in a lot more detail. She's also an amazing human being, and I'm lucky enough to call her a friend. So before we get into it, can I ask for some support on my channel? I'm going to bring interviews each week and upload various chants and other sort of positive stories. So yeah, please hit the like and subscribe, and yeah, just lots of interactions. So welcome, Simone. Thank you so much for being on my channel. It's an absolute pleasure. Why don't you introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Oh, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Tamsin. Thank you for the invite. You and I have had lots of informal discussions over the last couple of years, but this is on a different kind of level now, I would imagine. And
Yeah.
I'm really, really pleased to be here with you, and especially at the
Thank
start
you.
of this new journey of yours.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. So you just want me to introduce myself, did you say, to start with?
Yeah, so yeah, just tell us a little bit about you. Do you know what? Actually, why don't we just start with how your week's been? We'll go into it that way and just see where we go. So, how's your week been today? Like this week?
Wow. Right. Let me think about my week. So I think it's been a game of two halves. I'd say the last 3 days have been a bit more zen. If I
Yeah.
could,
Okay.
it's kind of like I've found my groove again after a few weeks of upheaval for one thing or another. And it may be because I've made a conscious decision to not have too many clients the last couple of weeks. Just needed a little bit of a break from work and a little bit of
Okay.
family time, and but most of all, a little bit of time to myself. So that's been nice. So I obviously I'll talk about the emotional freedom technique tapping, but I've been doing quite a lot of work on myself the last 3 days, and that's just found me some inner peace. I use it regularly, kind of the self tapping stuff. I use it quite regularly, but only in small bursts, whereas I've concentrated quite heavily the last 3 days. So I just feel in a place quite peaceful and centered at the
Yeah.
moment. So this interview's at a good time. The first half of the week, I seem to be a bit more fractious. And I think it's often the way, I don't know if you find it, like when you take some time from work and you get out of that kind of routine, you're a little bit lost. I find I'm a little bit like, who
Yeah.
am I? What's just me having a whole day to myself all about? So I think the first 3 or 4 days were catching up on cleaning my filthy house and
Yeah. It's such like I've gotten to such a ritual now of cleaning my house very routinely, like on a Saturday morning. It's such a ritual. I clean everywhere, and it's like I'm sweeping the corners of my mind, and then I get the sage out. And yeah, especially if you're going through anything challenging, I would definitely recommend anyone just clean your house and you'll feel a lot better.
I totally
Just get
agree. I
your
mean,
house clean.
the Marie Kondo method is something that I don't know if anyone watching this will know what I'm talking about, but the Kondo, I don't know what's the shortened term for
Yeah.
it. But I got into that years ago. Somebody bought me the book for my birthday, and it was sat on the shelf collecting dust for 2 or 3 years. And I just opened it one day, and my whole life changed. So yeah, I get you. It's kind of like that keeping on top of things, and I think that routine has kind of gone adrift the past few months. So I found that place. I'm glad you said about the cleaning, because you're like me. You work from home. So you've got to have a good space to work in. It's got to feel healthy and to be cleansed and cleared, and especially with me, this room that I'm sat in now is where I do a lot of my work with clients. So this room in particular I need to feel on top of it in here. So
Yeah, it's so important just to have a clean space, isn't it? Well, it's always looked nice when I've been invited round, so it's a lovely place. So yeah, where do you want to go from here then? Should we talk a little bit about, why don't you tell us about what is EFT, Cymone?
Emotional freedom technique, in a nutshell, is acupuncture without needles. So
Okay,
that's
that's a good way
the
to
best way
describe
I can describe it. So it's rooted in Chinese medicine. There's a lot of information out there on the web. There's so much information out there that I'm not going to go into it too deeply, because people can kind of find out the basics of it for themselves. But basically, you have certain areas of your body that you tap on, mainly around the head, in this case, the head, face, chest, under the arms, and some of the finger points that correspond with meridians. And
Yep.
by tapping on those certain areas, what you find is it's kind of, if you're holding any areas of stress in the body, so just for ease of this interview, just saying, like, if you held some pain in your neck, in Chinese medicine, they would be looking at that as a form of holding an area in your body that's got trauma, that's got some trapped energy. And so the idea of anything based on acupressure is about releasing energy and getting things flowing again. So if you look at your body as kind of like a map or rivers of energy, and that what we're trying to achieve by tapping on those points is we're trying to clear energy in the body to get things moving again. So that's, so I use tapping to move areas of pain, to shift stressful thoughts, to look at where you might be holding stress in the body. So, you know, if you're anxious about, for argument's sake, say you've got to do some public speaking, or you've got to be on something like this, and you're really out of your depth, you're nervous about, say, being interviewed or speaking live or on a stage or something like that, you might want to kind of tap out the stress that you're holding in your body. Where are you holding it in your body? Why are you holding it there? And it's just kind of like shifting that blocked energy. And what we often find is that something that we might be struggling with today is something that is rooted way back in childhood. So if it was the example I've given of public speaking or being on something like this, there might be some stressful event that happened when you were younger that was associated with saying something in front of people, and something happened and you've held this fear in your body ever since. So it's working on shifting old trauma, old, stale, stagnant trauma through the body. And
one of the things that I absolutely love about it, Cymone, is that you don't have to talk about any of your problems. That's a big differentiating thing about it, isn't it? That's where it differs from other practices. Is that right?
For me, that was hugely important, because my initial introduction to EFT was back in 2009, and I had been, in fact, it was a little bit before that, 2008 probably. I had been struggling with something that had happened in my personal life to somebody that was very close to me. And it was the issue that I was dealing with was one that I could not speak out of respect for that person. I couldn't speak about it. See, it's in my throat now.
Yeah.
Very interesting when these things come up, because I'm telling you, it's something I couldn't speak about. My throat started to close up. So it's something I clearly still struggle with. And it was such a big event that happened. And excuse me. I came across EFT quite by accident. So I wasn't at a place in my life where I could actually afford therapy at the time either. So had I been, I might have gone and sought some psychotherapy or something to try and get some understanding of why this issue was affecting me so much. But I happened to come across an EFT practitioner at an event that was kind of unrelated. It was a hypnosis event that I was at, and they brought on a guest speaker. And the thing that I'd been struggling with as an audience member, I chose that thing to work on. The speaker was asking, you know, where in your body were you feeling this area of trauma, this area of stress, and out of 0 to 10, on the scale of 0 to 10, 10 being like off the scale, trauma, and 0 being not feeling stressed at all, I was at 11, 12. So I was able to it was just off the scale how I felt. And so I learned in that audience that day how to tap on acupuncture points on the subject that I'd been struggling with for several years. And by the time I'd done several rounds of this, without the guy knowing anything about what I was tapping on, because there were about 1,000 people in the audience, I got that down to like a 2, to the point where, and I've spoken about this I know in front of you before, Tamsin, but I got it down to a point where it was like, oh, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of this feeling. It actually feels boring. I'm bored of the subject. I'm bored of carrying it. There was a feeling of like, ugh. That's all I can explain. So I was absolutely gripped. So I'd gone through carrying this massively heavy burden to a massive, massive sense of freedom, like somebody had taken £100 off my back, off my shoulders, off my head, off my body. I just felt light. I felt elevated and lifted. So I was gripped. I was gripped by EFT. And within 3 years...
Cymone, how long did you... Sorry to interrupt.
No.
How long did you been holding this feeling, with this problem, with this close person in your life? How long had it been going on for?
2004. So an incident occurred, which again, out of respect for that person, I won't discuss live, and I don't need to. And that's the point. This is why we're talking about this, isn't it? Is that I don't need to. And as a practitioner, what's really important about this is, particularly when people might be carrying something they're extremely ashamed about or fearful about speaking about, something that they just cannot get past here. Imagine the effect that has on anyone's body, that they can't actually physically speak about something without suffering. Is I don't need to know. I only need to know what are they thinking about it, and where are they feeling it in their body. And once I know those two things, are you thinking about it? Shall we give it a name? Shall we call it something? Shall we call it like the green monster or something, so that you and I both know you're thinking about the green monster? And where are you feeling it in your body? How are you scoring it? And then it's at a 10, it's off the scale maybe. And that's all I need to know. So how freeing is that? Yes, I'm a great proponent of talk therapy, but in some cases, A, it might not be accessible to your budget, and B, you might not want to talk about it. It might be something you can't talk about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing that separates it really. And I know that we've had some sessions that you've helped me with, and to be quite honest, I was maybe a bit skeptical at first. I thought, how does this even work? But then when because you're so good at it, you know. And obviously, I'm not just sort of saying that, you really are. You get to the nitty gritty of something, and that's the beauty of it, is knowing that I don't have to reveal all my deep, dark secrets or anything like that. And you've worked with, am I right in thinking, victims of sexual abuse and things like that, and all of these different things, and it's when somebody's in that low point and they just want to heal, but maybe they've had bad experiences with talk therapy, and to be in that vulnerable situation, it gives that person, they can become empowered. And I just think it's so freeing, like you say. Okay, then. So, what's Matrix Reimprinting then, Cymone?
So, we live in this thing that some of us refer to as the Matrix. It's this shit show that many of us, excuse my language, but that's the only thing. And if I think about like certain times in my life where it's just been an absolute mess going on, we've all been there. you're in that matrix, in the here and now, and it's so debilitating. So the matrix is what you and I are in right now. The fact that we've done lots of work around our own psyche enables us to have a positive, high energy between us. Okay, so we're already off to a good start. Before we start this, we've come in with energy, we've come in with positivity. So that's our matrix. That's what we're in right now. But if I go back to my own story of working in that audience where there's 1,000 people, so I'm working away on that issue, and took myself back to what I took myself back to with the advice of the person on the stage was when the event occurred. So I took myself back to the day I experienced what I experienced in connection with somebody that was very close to me. And so I was in that matrix, that shit show. Okay. So what Matrix Reimprinting is about is, so if I work with you, Tamsin, and you take me, whether you've spoken to me about it or not, I know that you're in that place where the thing happened. Yeah. So I'm taking you back in with my help, back into that time, that event, that matrix, that energy. And what I'm going to guide you. So let's say it takes you back to an event when you were 10. Yeah. A memory comes up from when you were 10 that might have been connected with you feeling stressed about public speaking. So suddenly you say, do you know what? A memory's come up. I was at school and I was asked to say my times tables out loud, or something like that, just as an example. And you feel the fear that you felt then, that you were asked to speak up in front of the whole class, and I need to know you're feeling it. Yeah, that shit show that you were in, that awful energy that you were in. And what we'll do is then you will go in a nutshell, introduce yourself to 10-year-old Tamsin, who is a very separate person from the one you are now. 10-year-old Tamsin who experienced that awful thing that day when she was 10. And you will go in, tell her who you are, that you're here, that you're from the future, basically. I mean, whatever language is best for you, but you explain who you are. That 10-year-old knows exactly who you are, actually. But you ask their permission to say, I've got this technique that I use that really, really helps me. Would you allow me to use it with you? And they might want to tap on themselves or let you tap on them. But you're basically you become your own practitioner that way. So you, as Tamsin now, is able to go in with such compassion, such love, such empathy for 10-year-old Tamsin. You've completely got her best interests at heart. There's nothing about that 10-year-old child that is repellent to you. You feel nothing but love. 1,000% of the time, it's always about love when you're with your inner younger child, your younger self, and together you work on lowering that. You're not trying to say it hasn't happened. It has. Somebody's asked 10-year-old Tamsin to speak publicly and recite her 7 times tables, say, and so you're getting down with her, the tapping. Either on her in your imagination, in that shit show, in that matrix that she was in, and you become your own practitioner, and you work with her until the anxiety level subsides and subsides and subsides, until she's able to say, like, I'm all right, I'm okay. And you don't stop until she's okay. Because once you've shifted that energy, once you've shifted it, and 10-year-old Tamsin might say, I want my mum here with me, or I need the dog with me, I want my teddy. It could be anything. You're enabling that to happen. So, and what you're doing is you're saying, look, this awful thing's happened that day to you, Tamsin, this day. What would change it? What would you rather have instead? Well, I just want to go out. I just want to go out and play with my friends. I just want to go out and I want to go to the beach, or I just want to go to the play park and things like that. So you take her through that motion of allow her to go wherever she feels comfortable. And so it's about re-imprinting that memory, so that when you today go into that, go into that memory, rather than being stuck in that matrix, that energy, you think, whoa, out of that, we're at the playground, oh, we're at the beach that day, we've got the dog, we've got this, that, and then the memory is re-imprinted. So it's not saying it didn't happen, but it's re-imprinted.
So it's like, it's like re-imprinting it, reframing it, and like taking back control and giving yourself or the situation the love or the compassion that you either didn't give yourself or that you didn't receive from whoever. And are you able to share that story, Cymone? I think you spoke publicly about it, where you were in a relationship with a guy when you was much younger, and it ended, and then you sort of re-imprinted that story. Do you know the one I mean?
Yes, I do. So I was really, really shocked and hadn't expected it at all. So I'm kind of 16, 17, and I'm just about to walk into so I get dumped in a pub. I shouldn't really have been in a pub anyway, but do you know what I mean? We were at that. In fact, I lived in pubs. I grew up in pubs, so to be in someone else's pub it just seemed like the norm. But I got dumped, and it rocked my world. It absolutely rocked my world. Really, really rocked it. And the stress of that stayed with me for years. And I think at the time, it's my young, naive self then really thought that this would be the person that I would marry and have children with, and that life was just going to sail on and on. I felt a huge connection at that time to that person. And so it was a terrible shock. It was really a shock. But what I did, one of the first things, in fact, I worked on it just before I did my training. I'd read through a lot of the bump about Matrix Reimprinting. I thought, I'll just have a little go on that. It's one of the most effective things I'd ever done. So what I did was, I thought, well, I did get dumped in that pub, so I don't want to change the story, because that's just kind of unreal. So I took myself through that scenario. So what I did before, in my imagination, so I'm back with my 16, 17-year-old self, and I see her, and she is standing against the wall. She knows what's coming, because this is, we're working with a memory now. So she stands outside the pub, and before she goes in, she just taps, with my help, right the way through, saying, I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. I'm okay. I'm safe, and I'm okay. And so she taps down until she feels confident enough to walk there, because one of the things that had plagued me was, if I hadn't walked in that pub, the whole thing, the whole scenario had plagued me for years. Of like, if I hadn't gone in that night, maybe it wouldn't have happened if I'd not gone out that night, because he wasn't expecting me to be in there. And I think probably on reflection, he was probably seeing someone else, because he wasn't expecting to see me. And so I kind of tapped down the stress level, and then I went in and I listened to him say, look, I've been wanting to tell you for quite a while now, blah, 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 like this. And in that memory of the 16-year-old self, it's just like, okay, oh, okay, like that. And then when he finished, I said, have you finished now? Yeah, I said like that. And I said, I've never told you this before, but your breath smells really bad. And that was my way, because when I reflect on that person, he actually had bad breath. And this is the thing that's so helpful in people with overcoming relationships where they're stuck, is that trying just to get them to remember things about that person that weren't perfect. They weren't a demigod. They weren't perfect. They weren't meant to be with you for the rest of their life. In fact, they had flaws. And because you had the rug pulled from under you and you had no control over that situation, you forget that they had flaws. So in my memory as a 16, 17-year-old, I was able to say, your breath smells, I think you need to know that before I leave, so that you might want to do something about that if you're going to have other relationships. So I was able to speak my truth in that thing, in that scenario. And I just gave him a hug in the scenario, and I just walked out. So I was still dumped, but it was like, because the work that the 16-year-old self had done, and the freeing, the fact that was, and I don't think I was doing it by the book at that point. It was, I was doing the best I could because I wanted to experience. But that is re-imprinting what was happening in the Matrix at that time.
Yeah, makes total sense.
So the long and short of it is I took control of that. As the 16th century, I was able to take control of that and remove myself. No tears, none of what really happened that night, which was just literally felt like I was crawling out. I felt like the world had gone into a tunnel, and the only way I could before that is that feeling that you're in a pinball machine, and I felt like I was banging into walls. I couldn't get my breath. I couldn't, But in this scenario, nothing.
And that's it, isn't it? From my experience with your EFT, is that I come to you with an issue. I will have told you what it is, but you obviously don't have to if you don't want to. That's obviously your choice. But from my experience, what it feels like, you've got all these thoughts racing. You're not in a good place. Your mind's all over the place. You just feel overwhelmed. And then eventually you're going through like the tapping points, and you take the person on a journey. And for anybody watching, Cymone, well, I'll share all the details, but it's definitely worthwhile trying this modality out, because what it then does for me, it puts a distance between you and the thing of whatever it is. And like you say, then you start yawning. And I'm doing it now because it's like you become so bored of this story, this narrative, and this person or this thing. You think, how boring. And yeah, your breath does smell, or you're not that great, and you've got all of these flaws like the rest of us. And why am I so stressed about this thing or this person and whatnot? And then you do have to do the work as well, just for the viewers watching. You do have to really be in this to try and change the scenario, or the narrative, if you like. But by the end of it, I feel really drained, but in a good way, because I know that I've released so much stuff. And yeah, you're right, it goes from like a 10 to a 2, and maybe you might need to go back into it and have some more sessions or whatever it is, or continue doing it yourself. But yeah, it's just it works. It's fascinating.
It just works, Tamsin. Yeah. Sorry, did you ask me something?
Carry on. I was going to carry on then.
What's fascinating about it is I don't want to go too heavily into this, but a lot of the triggers that we have. So, for instance, that story I've just told you, what will have been triggering about that for me in many ways was that was very, very connected to what happened when I was 8, was that my father left the family home very, very suddenly. And so, of course, what happens is your trigger events happen. So that had triggered something in me that was my 8-year-old self couldn't deal with, and I'd never learned to deal with the fact that I'd been abandoned by my father. In fact, I don't know why I'm doing that in quote marks, because it was abandonment. So all that triggering. So going back into that scenario, if you have to, what it will do eventually is get you to the place where we try in Matrix Reimprinting, because the two don't have to go together. EFT can stand alone by itself, and it's something I work with many people who never experience Matrix Reimprinting. And a prime example of that is my husband has problems with his sciatic nerve, and he does not want to go into anything other than pain management with EFT. And it's so successful for him. I don't know. I wish I could take him further, but that's just not where he's at. And I have to respect that. But for pain management and moving that energy away from that area of his body, it's just amazing for him. So I just want to make that clear that EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping, stands alone. Okay, yeah. So that the Matrix Reimprinting is, to me, it's like the icing on the cake of EFT, if that's what's called for. Because what happens is memories come up when you're tapping on, I hate the way my Auntie Margaret spoke to me the other day. Or I hate the way that shopkeeper spoke to me the other day, and it's made me feel this, and this, the way that I was spoken to by that shopkeeper or something like that. And suddenly, out of that, I watch it happen with people. There'll be like a point where they go, like that, like, what happened then? What happened then? That's the shift I'm after. And it's probably not related to it. A memory just came up of being on the school bus and somebody threw a pencil at my head, but somehow that's been triggered, that issue. So we're gonna say, well, let's just stay with that. Let's just stay. If it comes to nothing, we'll move away from it. But suddenly we've got a bit of like you say, it could be a yawn, or it could be a shift, or something has brought up a memory of a triggering. So the point I'm getting to is that we try with Matrix Reimprinting to get back to memories as early as we can, because, and again, I don't want to go too heavily into it, but if we can go pre-6, from ages 0 to 6, there's the way that the brain works is that most of your abilities to manage stressful events, or your abilities not to be able to manage, are firmly fixed in by the time you're 5, 6. They're firmly fixed in there. And there's a whole plethora of science behind that, which again, I'm not going to go into now. It's something we could talk about another time, because in itself, that's an hour-long subject. So if we can get back, the point is that we don't even remember most of the time why we're triggered. So you could be walking down a street tomorrow, happy as Larry, whistling away, and then suddenly by the time you get to the bottom of the street, you feel depressed, you feel heaviness has come over you. And it could be someone's walked past you that's wearing an aftershave that someone in your family used to wear, something that triggers you, but you haven't picked up on it. Subconsciously you have, but not consciously. Or there could be a smell. It could be a smell of something coming from a cafe, or something that triggers a memory for you without you even knowing it. So between top of the road, bottom of the road, you could go from whistling, happy, getting about your day, to feeling quite depressed by the time you get to the bottom of the street. And something along that path has triggered you. Something has triggered you. And because we don't have a lot of memory, we have some memory, but the day-to-day memory is we can't access it unless we do something like this kind of go into that state where we're able to enter into memories from childhood. I mean, if we want to go too heavily into it, as young as we want it to be. So it could be
fascinating.
Pre-birth. It's amazing where this takes you. And there are practitioners that work with kind of past life stuff. I know I've delved into that as well and done past life work and all sorts of things. But I mean, that's not something I kind of shout from the roofs about. It's not my area of expertise. But if the client goes there, then the client goes there. That's fine by me. There's no area I wouldn't go into if that's what the client wants to do.
Yeah, and we were talking off air earlier. Well, there's a couple of things here actually, but we were just sort of talking about all these different subjects we could cover. And Cymone is literally one of the most fascinating people to have a chat with. And I always say to you, probably get sick of it now, I always feel better for just speaking to you. And you've got a wealth of knowledge and wisdom, and also a professional way about you as well, and just sort of cut through the crap. There was something I was going to bring up as well then. So you've made a bold claim to me this evening, and
Right.
and I know that you can do this. So for anybody watching, someone has had an interaction, and it's up to you if you disclose that, but somebody pretty well known. Well, why don't you tell the story? Do you know the one I mean?
I may not. Maybe I shouldn't mention his name at this point. I don't know.
Maybe
I
not
don't
at
know.
this stage, but just for the views then, Cymone claims she can, she, with the work that she does, is to help people stop smoking, but it was just the way that you've sort of made the claim to this well-known person. And I love the confidence of it. It's because when you know your craft, or you know what it is, your modality, and you've had those interactions with people and you've seen the results, it's like, yes, I can do this. And you've had quite a lot of interest, and people say, well, how do you do that? So are you able to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a guy that I've been following for several years now. He's out there in the truth community, I suppose we'd call it. Is somebody that's trying to get to the bottom of things. So I've always been interested in stuff like that. Somebody that tries to unpick something that's happened, and they'll unpick it. The guy's called Mark Attwood, Attwood. And you can find him. He's been knocked off Facebook 2 or 3 times. He's been knocked off YouTube 2 or 3 times, and on censorship. So he speaks about some quite heavy topics. And so I followed it. I think you know who I mean as well, don't you? Mark
Yes,
Attwood.
yeah.
So I follow him. I'm not a diligent student of his at all. I just like his attitude. I like people who try to get to the truth of the matter, whether it upsets people or not. I like the down and dirty. And I know you do as well, Tamsin. And we've got quite different views on some things. I know that. But basically, what we like is to cut through the bullshit. And I'm quite happy to say, you know, you don't have to go there. They don't have to go there. I want to go there. I want to dig down. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm happy to hold my hands up and say, oh, do you know, I went down that rabbit hole and it was all a load of bullshit. And I'll come back out and get about my life. I'm not frightened to admit that I might have got something wrong. So I'm off on a tangent now, but he's very much, that's what appeals to me about this guy. So he has vulnerabilities, just like the rest of us. So I just want to make a disclaimer now. I don't come from a place of ego. I'm not a guru. I'm my own guru, but I'm no one else's. So I don't come from a place of ego. I come from a place of more and more and more of wanting to be truthful about what my abilities are and actually what they're not. I've got massive vulnerabilities as well, like massive vulnerabilities. But the claim I made, which I feel quite happy, is he put this post out there on Telegram saying, does anyone know of an effective NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming practitioner out there who might be able to help me stop smoking? Someone in Ireland, that's where he is, in Southern Ireland, who can help me stop smoking. And I just, without any hesitation whatsoever, because I like some of the stuff, but I don't often comment on anyone's stuff, but I immediately put, I'm an EFT / Matrix Reimprinting practitioner, and I could stop you smoking, and I'll do it live on air.
I love it.
Because I think I can. Yeah, I actually know I can.
You can.
So, yeah, I know. I believe that. And what I need is the person who I'm working with to believe that can happen as well. I need that belief to be a two-way process, because once you've both got that belief that this might happen, amazing things can happen then. Amazing things can happen.
Amazing. Well,
because that would be
on that as well.
So again,
I was just going to say, for anybody watching, we'll keep you posted on the update, and maybe we'll we'll
see what happens. So
update,
look, he's returned my message. He returned the message. I think it's him. There are so many charlatans out there at the moment, so I don't know if it's him or not. And I just basically have said on my tapping and truthing, if you find me through Facebook, on my tapping and truthing website, you can make a 15-minute free appointment with me to talk it over. So that's all I've said. I think the ball's in his court now, because I won't chase him up. But I made that claim because I felt I was coming from the truthful place in my heart.
Yeah.
You know, whether he takes me up on it is up to him. But we'll see.
Good for
And
you.
I will.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
Sorry, it cut out a little bit, Cymone, there. I didn't hear what you said.
I said I will keep you posted on that.
Okay, fantastic. So I've been making well, I made some notes earlier on, and just a few sort of things that I thought might be good to get to talk about. You've had an interesting relationship with foods, and you've been quite open about that. And you and I have done a couple of collaborations with our offerings, and it's helped me personally, and you've helped lots of people. Can you just talk us through your relationship with food and how EFT has helped with that, Cymone?
Yeah, I can. So I've had a really, what can I say? I've had an interesting relationship with food and eating. A lot of my choices with food and earlier in my life, heavy smoking, have stemmed from childhood. It stemmed from, I suppose addiction to a certain extent, but as coping mechanisms. It is like with any kind of addiction to any substance, mine being mainly sugar, is that is, I always see addiction as when the going gets too tough in your thought patterns, you need the drug. So when if you've got too much time to think about things, addicts don't like space to think, so addicts will turn to the drug of choice. And in my case, it's been over the years sugar all my life, as it is with a lot of people. It's how we're rewarded as children. If you're a good girl, you can have some chocolate later on. If you're a good boy, you can have those that marathon, that Snicker. Oh God, I'm showing my age now. That Snickers bar, you can have that later on.
Yeah. What's a marathon?
It's like a reward system. So most of us have got some form of addiction to things that we were rewarded with as kids. So no one's fault. We know better nowadays, but it's no one's fault. It is what it is, and it's the way a lot of people show love to their children as well. So it's not calling out any names here, but. So that's, smoking was a distraction, eating's a distraction. It was all a distraction from my thoughts. That's what I would say. So I'm sure anyone watching this, and yourself included, Tamsin, would know what that means, is that need for a distraction, because even though it might be subconscious, I don't like where my head's at right now. In this moment, I've got to get myself out of it and change things right now. So that might be going to make a sandwich, go and get some crisps, get some chocolate, get a can of Coke, roll a cigarette, which was my smoking choice, was to roll my own tobacco. So the whole thing, when I look back, it's probably 10, 12 years since I gave up. Don't even know when I gave up, because it doesn't matter anymore. But it kind of gave me up in the end. But it was the whole thing about making, rolling, playing, smoking. It was the whole addiction thing, the whole thing with food as well, has been about getting away from my thoughts. So if we're just going to talk about food right now, my relationship with food has become increasingly more tolerant and understanding of why I'm doing. Once you understand why you do what you do, you can kind of let yourself off the hook. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop turning towards my drug of choice, but it's like you have this kind of respect for yourself after thinking, do you know what, you've got through life. That addiction, maybe the sugar, maybe has kept me alive over the years. Maybe that's what's kept me from doing something really stupid to myself. Maybe at the times when it's been hardest for me to be distracted by food is what's actually, and I start to get this whole new relationship with, like, hang on a minute, maybe my addiction to sugar has actually saved my life. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well,
without it,
yeah.
without the cigarettes, where would I have gone? Where would I have gone? And I work with people with this relationship with alcohol, with narcotics. I say narcotics because of the Narcotics Anonymous, so it's that kind of American way of saying it. But I suppose illegal substances, and it's just that relationship we have them. Maybe that's what kept you alive. Maybe that's what kept you going. Maybe that need to score, that brain power. We've talked about this before. That brain power that you put into getting that next fix, maybe that's what's kept you alive. I don't know. It's just a theory of mine. So the relationship with my drug of choice has become one of much more respect. And I think that once you start to find that respect for the substance and the respect for you and the understanding, your relationship with food becomes very, very, very different. Becomes very
Thank
different.
you for explaining that. Yeah.
I can't put it any other way, but it's a long, lifelong process. I will never get over my addiction to sugar, ever. And that's all right. I don't want to. That's fine by me. As long as I understand it, and as long as I understand sometimes that's exactly what I need, because that just might save my life tomorrow. That's all right. You know,
Interesting.
While it's okay, it's the furthest thing from my mind. While it's okay, while I'm in my zen, and I'm grounded and I'm centralized, it's like it's okay. It's not needed. What's needed is nature, fresh air, talking to you, you know, hugging my grandchild. That's what my drug of choice is most of the time now. So, and that makes me feel quite choked to actually say. I don't think I've ever said that out loud in that way, but those when your distraction becomes health, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. It's just,
You know,
it's a lifelong journey, isn't it? It's we haven't got to figure this out in a weekend. And yeah, like when you were saying earlier about like sending yourself love, like 10-year-old Tamsin, 10-year-old Cymone, and just treating ourselves with that care and that nurture. We're our own biggest critics. And when you can come from that place of, you know, I'm doing the best that I can, and you know, we're all just doing the best that we can, really, you know, and we just need to have that compassion for ourselves. And if nothing else, just be kind. Just be kind. That's enough. You know, it doesn't matter about fancy titles, status, wealth, and stuff. Just be kind. Just be kind to yourself and others, and that's it, really. Yeah, I hear that. We spoke earlier on, Simon, about well, you told me about social isolation. I've said that right. Can you talk us through what that is, and yeah, just a little bit more depth?
Yeah, I think it was sparked again. There have been times in everyone's life where they will have experienced some form of social isolation, and it's a mouthful. I follow a psychologist on social media called Richard Grannon. He's a Liverpudlian guy. I think he's actually from the Wirral. He fascinates me as well because he kind of like he kind of tells it how it is and gets down to the truth.
He's great, yeah.
Lots of experiences that I can relate to, and as a guy that is, you know, he's been in security most of his adult life. He's done what do you call it when you protect yourself? It's gone out my head.
Socialization.
No, physically,
No?
when you try and ward somebody off you. That's self. What do you call it, Tamsin? He's taught
self-defense.
Thank you. Self-defense. So he's a self-defense instructor. He's worked in security, trained in psychology, I think in his mid-late 20s. So he's come to the table late, but he's also a bodybuilder. So what's fascinating for me is that me as a 5'5" woman who's not strong, and there's got plenty of flaws as well, is that I can relate to this guy who's built like a brick shithouse. He's been in security most of his life, taxi driving, teaching self-defense, then studied psychology. So, and he comes from such a non-bullshit place. But sometimes he just hits the nail on the head for me. Most of the work I do, when I think about it, a lot of the work I do, particularly with Matrix Reimprinting, is around people feeling isolated. They might not come with that to me with that in mind, but when you boil down to it, a lot of what we suffer from is isolation or fear, not isolation so much as fear of isolation, of being, because so what he said the other day, and it was like, oh God, of course, he said there are, and it probably doesn't come from him, it probably comes from somebody way high, but I didn't pick up on where it came from. But there are two main fears for human beings. The first one is the fear of death. The second is the fear of social isolation. And it was like, again, it's hard to say, isn't it? Social isolation. And it's like we are not meant to be isolated from our group, our community, our family. It's not meant to be. And often people who have struggled at the hands of family members or friendship groups, things like that, have to self-isolate. So they self-isolate out of a need to protect themselves. But it's actually that they're creating the very thing that they fear, and they're forced into. You did an interview I watched on YouTube with Danny Bigden.
Mm-hmm.
His whole story, it touched me so much. His whole life story was one of isolation from others, and how he has had to self-isolate as well as being socially isolated by people within his family and his community. So that really kind of hit that. So that subject is one that is prevalent, I think, throughout everything we do, every experience we have. And so his story of social isolation and self-isolation as the only way he could survive was wrenching for me. So that for me is a subject that I've become, it's really so strange, because I had the several clients. This is becoming a realization with me of things that have happened to me. You'll know yourself as well. It's things that have actually isolated you from society based on some beliefs that you might have. That is generally it. So that for me has been something that could be right out of my hands. So an example I would give you is something that is highly unlikely to happen these days, but the street I grew up on as a youngster, when my father left when I was 8, I didn't know any families that came from divorced parents. I do not remember, I'm sure there were, but I do not remember any of my friends coming from broken families. So myself and my brother were pretty unique. But what I can tell you is that on that street, some of the kids were stopped from playing with me and my brother, because we were from a broken home. So that was an early form of social isolation. And several things like that have happened throughout life that have been out of my hands, but also maybe based on my belief system or something I did, that have built up to the point where social isolation has become at times the norm. And I think that what my own experience, and I see this with so many clients I work with, if you're lucky, you build up really resilient defense systems, and you'll create coping mechanisms to try and work within that that being socially isolated. So I think in my case, it taught me that, you know, that thing about flight and fright is that you go into those two categories. There's another category, and that's fawning, where you fawn over people, where you please like me, please like me. And I very much have developed that way of being as I grew up, of becoming this person who was very likable, and you know, and that was as a coping mechanism for keeping people around me. So, but you know, it's taken me to be, you know, throughout my 50s to come to that realization. I'm 60 now, and I've probably the last 10 years I think have been spent on that. So again, not just my relationship with food, not just my relationship with cigarettes, but my relationship with social isolation has been massive. Has been massive, about understanding why, what happened, why did it happen, could I have changed it? Very often, no, you damn well couldn't have changed it. But you know, it's to take myself back into those scenarios and work on it, so that this coping mechanism of fawning, because when you're socially isolated, there's nothing to run away from or to, there's nothing to fight or flight in it. You have got to develop new mechanisms. And I think that my MO throughout life has been that fawning. I can see myself in so many scenarios throughout my life as being somebody that fawns. And if you look at the true definition of that, it's basically it's acting in a way that will enable others to like you, that shows them respect that they often really don't deserve.
It's that
so
seeking validation, isn't it?
It makes sense what I say, because I'm not. It's not something
totally,
I'm aware of it, but it's not something I've spoken out loud about. So I hope that makes sense to people. But
yeah, and I was just thinking when you were saying earlier about I don't know if you quite worded it verbatim like this, but you know, our brains forming by the age of 6, basically, that you know, you build up all your resilience by that age, and that's kind of a done deal. Then, do you think that we are predisposed to our surroundings then when we're little? And if we've had like bullying, for example, or maybe not treated so well at home by the caregiver, and then you've had this maybe child, for example, that's retreated and they've been bullied, and they use this isolate, I can't say that word, they isolate themselves, and then going into adulthood, then they've already learnt this sort of coping mechanism, and I can just see how that would just sort of play out. And does that make sense?
oh, totally. To me, it makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. And I think once you get to understand that about why you've developed those things, you know, if you get a child that is has a parent who is emotionally quite cold, quite expressionless, they will develop ways often of trying to get the parent interested, and they will any form of behaviour that gets that parent interested will do. So it can be really quite bad behaviour from a child who will any form of connection with that parent will do, even if it's angry. But to be ignored, socially isolated, is the worst thing for anybody. It is the worst thing for any child, any tiny baby. There were lots of work done on that by somebody called Bowlby back in the, I don't know what it would have been, 40s, 50s, on, I mean, it was totally unethical to do now, but parents remaining very, very stone-faced to a child, and children just learning to kind of look away. There's no eye contact. So they learn to isolate where they're looking. It was a really sad experiment, actually. But once the parent starts to interact, they're back to that animated thing. But they will learn techniques where they don't even look at the parent, because it's in their tiny bodies. It's all way too painful. So they will self-isolate from the social Isolation.
We can't say it, can we?
No.
It is a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so this whole area of line of work of yours, it's really so interesting, and I feel that we are going to have many more topics to share, and just excited to see where this journey takes you, and I sort of separately and together, and yeah, it's just really interesting. We're coming up to an hour. Is there any other subjects you want to bring to the table, or anything that's on your chest, or anything you want to share before we close out?
Only to say, Tamsin, that I am really glad to be spending this time with you. I always am glad to spend time in your company, but I love what you're doing. I love the idea of this. You're the perfect person to be doing this. For me, it's just allowing that space. When do we get allowed the space just to talk, and I mean, we all need that. So for me, it's just, I'm so grateful, and also that you said a few nice compliments to me earlier, but one, I just, it's not about belittling you. There's a big age gap between you and I. You are around the age group of my sons. I did have them very early, though, I will say that. So it's not about your age. It's nothing to do with your age. But what I do need to convey is that the wisdom coming from you surpasses that of people way above my age. I have really appreciated some of your takes on life, have really kind of helped with the way I'm thinking about things, especially around social isolation, funnily enough, because I think that's a topic, without going in too heavily, that we've been talking about. We have both experienced isolation over the last 3 years because of some of the belief systems that we have, and we don't need to go into those at all. But I think that just gave us a sense that I'm maybe not the only person going through this. It's good that I can talk, but your take on it was so much more mature than mine. And so I found that the last 2-3 years have been much easier because of your input as well, and your take on life. It's just a real place of, I don't even know if wisdom's, it's just a place of like, that's where you're at. I can't say it the other way. I really appreciate it so much. So to do this with you, I feel very blessed.
Oh, well, the feeling's absolutely mutual. And like I say, I just always feel just better for speaking to you. And likewise, you've made the journey a lot more level-headed. And we met at a retreat a few years ago now, and we've worked together professionally since. And yeah, just an all-round good person. So where can people find you, Cymone, if they want to get in touch? I'm sure they will do.
Right. So tappingandtruthing.com is my website. I'm on Facebook. You can access my website really easily through Facebook. It's probably one of the easiest ways to get me. Facebook is Tapping and Truthing with Cymone. I'm on Instagram, a little bit on TikTok as well, under Tapping and Truthing with Cymone. You'll find me on there. Getting my head around doing a little bit more. So I think just life's kind of getting in the way. There's a nice website to go and have a peruse. That'll tell you a lot more about EFT, a lot more about Matrix Reimprinting, a lot more about me. There's a stack of videos that I've done over the last 3 years since I've been practicing this since 2012, but I didn't go on social media with it. I've just got word of mouth clients,
It's the best way, isn't it?
Yeah, but you and I have done them together. We sometimes do like a 5-week program where we'll pick a topic. Like the last one we did, Tamsin, was around self-actualization, which was just fab, wasn't it? It was just great. A couple of times a week for 5 weeks. I think we probably over-egged the amount of time we put into it, but we might not do 2 a week. But maybe in the future we'll do 4 or 5 week programs again, because I think they're give people a flavour of how to kind of like work towards it, because self-actualization, about just that coming out of that feelings of life being in duality and just finding some peace. Just finding some peace. I know that's what you and I are just, it's what drives us, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and the sort of containing that we did, if you want to call it that, is it gave a framework and also that accountability. And I know it helped me and plenty others as well. So I will share all your details and yeah, please hit the subscribe button, give us some love. I'd like to bring more interviews. So yeah, try and get the old algorithms to pick this up and reach more people. We've got positive stories to share, you know, from struggles to triumph, and we're trying to do some good in the world. And Swan and I will do some more talks together and maybe some round tables. So lots more exciting stuff in the pipeline. And as I say, we'll share all of Simone's details. Simone, shall we close by doing a little bit of breath work? Do you fancy that? And we'll do that for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, can I just very, very quickly say, I forgot to say before,
Yes.
on my website, you can book a 15-minute free appointment with me if there's anything you want to talk over, whether you feel something would work for you. So just that was all I wanted to say.
Yes,
so,
and I would definitely recommend doing so. Simone, you know, she has got a wealth of information. Try out the EFT, and yeah, you've got 15 minutes to see how she can help, and yeah, go from there. So yeah, thank you for reminding me
I'd
of
love
that.
to do some breath work with you, please. Yeah.
Fantastic. So let's just ground ourselves. So if you're sitting down, just relax the shoulders now. Let this be a time to just sort of go within, straighten your spine, become aware of your posture. And we're going to do some alternate nostril breathing here. So I should say, someone open your eyes now and follow what I'm doing. So we're going to have the left hand in Gyan Mudra. Sorry, we're going to have the right-handed Gyan Mudra. So the thumb and index finger together, like so. Place that on your lap, and then we're going to block off the left nostril with the thumb and the two index finger at the brow point, and we're going to inhale. So we're going to breathe basically through the right nostril. So let's just take some nice natural breaths first. And then when you're ready, block off the nostril with the thumb, and we're going to breathe through the right nostril. Inhale and exhale. We're going to do this for just 30 seconds and we'll begin. So deeply inhale, fill up the lungs, fully exhale. And then releasing the hands back down. Just notice how that feels. You might feel some sensation in the brow point. You might even feel a little bit dizzy or lightheaded, and it's balancing the left and right hemisphere of the brain. And then we're going to take that over to the opposite side. So we'll have the left hand in Gyan Mudra. So it's the thumb and the index finger together. Place it on your lap, and then we're going to block off the right nostril with the thumb, and again the two index fingers at the brow point. And then we'll breathe through the left nostril. And you might find that it's quite typical that you struggle through one nostril. It might be blocked sinuses, but just do what you can, and we'll start now.
Oh, this side's much easier.
And then releasing the hand back down. And just observe how you're feeling now. And just take some nice natural breaths. Really fill up the lungs. Fully exhale. And we're just going to place the hand over the heart. Let's just send ourselves some peace. Some loving thoughts. You're beautiful, you're kind. And you can ride whatever storms come, and it will always pass. And then we'll come back into the room. Oh, I think I needed that. So thank you once again, Cymone. I've really, really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure the viewers have. And if anybody has any further questions about EFT, Matrix Reimprinting, or if you do indeed wish to stop smoking and you want to take Cymone up on her offer and do that live, then please do get in touch. And as she mentioned earlier as well, please do take advantage of her 15-minute consultation. It's free, and she's a lovely person as well. And like I mentioned, she's got a wealth of information. It's fantastic at what she does. So namaste, Cymone. Thank you so much, and to the viewers watching as well. And yeah, we'll be back soon or next week with a lovely lady called Amy, and she's going to talk about ADHD and her experiences, and she's been recently diagnosed, and yeah, just more and more fascinating things to talk about. So please do get in touch, and yeah, we'll see you soon. So thank you for watching.
Thank you, my friend. Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.